Hi, Redditors. I have an awful experience to share with you all today. My husband made a plan to catch me in the act of cheating, and now I regret ever cheating on him. I never expected him to find out I was cheating. I cheated because I wanted to rebel. On one hand, there's me, the woman with low self-esteem and an inferiority complex, and then there's my husband, the man who gets all the validation and respect from everyone else. I hated the way people compared me to him and just made it seem like I was the one lucky to be married to him and he was not lucky to be married to me. I've always held a huge grudge in our marriage. Do you know what is worse? I never expected him to make a plan to catch me in the act. Being caught cheating has to be the most demeaning thing ever. You become so embarrassed and disappointed in yourself that you can't even afford to look in the mirror. You end up with regrets and a huge amount of what-ifs. You ask yourself, what if I didn't cheat? What if I did not give in to the temptation? But it's obviously too late for you to start rewinding time by that point, so all you can do is cry like the loser you are. I read somewhere that no one really intends to cheat, but that's bullshit. I cheated on my husband, and I know how intentional I was in doing it. I'm not going to make excuses for myself, but that doesn't make it less traumatizing. He made a plan? I still can't believe it. I'm having trouble digesting everything that happened recently. I still can't stomach the fact that my husband has been hatching up a secret plan for weeks, and I only just found out. My fellow Redditors, right now as I write this, I'm literally getting chills on my arm. Do you know what it means to live in the same house with someone who has been thinking of ways to ruin your life, and then you did not know? I'm just very thankful that he did not do something that both of us would end up regretting. I thought I was blindsiding him, but it seems like I was the one being blindsided. How ironic. For the sake of privacy and the tendency of some people recognizing our story, I'll not be sharing our real names. My husband will be known as H and I will be known as W. My husband is 30 years old and I'm 32 years old. Yes, Redditors, I'm older than my husband. I will not be surprised if I get comments talking about our age. To be honest, many people have been curious about our age in the past. They feel like it's weird that I'm older than my husband. I've always liked to be a little older than my partners in the past, and I've always loved the concept of being 2 years older than my husband. So, why did I cheat on my husband with a younger man? You see how complicated this whole situation is? Now that I think about it, I can see why my husband was practically furious with me. We've been married for 6 years now, and we've known each other for 9 years. Yes, we've known each other for a long time, lol. If you are wondering if we have a child, we don't. Even though we've been married for so long, we do not have a child. It's something that always messes with my self-confidence. The feeling I get when I see my peers with children while I don't have one of my own is really depressing. Situations like that can make you practically go crazy. I'm not trying to say that not having a child is what made me cheat on my husband. Oh no, that will be very far from the truth. My marriage is okay. It's a respectful marriage and we respect each other. I don't know how to say this without sounding like a bitch, but are marriages just supposed to be okay? Is it still wrong if I want to feel some butterflies in my stomach after 6 years? I do not think it's wrong to want to feel that way at all. I think it's a natural feeling that every woman and man should have even in a marriage. I know that sounds childish and weird, but I'm going to say it confidently. I don't think the feeling of excitement should end just because you're married. I am not blaming my husband for our bland marriage. I'm not blaming myself either because I know it takes 2 people to make a marriage exciting. But I also think it takes 2 people to make a marriage equal. Equity. I've always fought for equity in my marriage. The frustrating part is that the fight has never been with me and my husband. The fight has been with me and society. Everyone always has an opinion about us. There's always something to say when they see us together. He's so handsome and intelligent. He looks so hot. He's younger than her. These are words that have been a constant in our marriage. I'm writing this here on Reddit because this is also a healing journey for me. I'm trying to release all the anger I've bottled up inside of me for years. I'm tired, and I've always been tired of being told just how lucky I am to have H as my husband. I'm not trying to say I don't appreciate him. I'm just trying to say that I've been made to feel like I'm married to him, but he's not married to me. Do you know how hard it is to be relevant in a marriage that tags you as the lucky one? My fellow Redditors, it felt like every single thing I did was to match up with him and be worthy enough to be called his wife. Our problems began from the first few weeks after we got married. My husband is not a celebrity, but he's quite known in the city we live in. When I started attending social events with him, my insecurity spiked to the highest level ever. I'm not ashamed to admit that I seek public validation a little too much. Yes, it's a problem I'm currently dealing with. I've always been the type of person that wants to be seen and loved by everyone. I think the worst decision I made was getting married to a man that was everything I wanted to be, but unfortunately wasn't. He was loved by everyone and people swooned over his articulate nature and his intelligent mannerisms. I've always been the odd one who stands at the corner only to be recognized when our age gap is brought up. Listen, I don't even see the reason why people are obsessed with our age gap. It's just 2 years. I'm older than him with just 2 fucking years. Why is it such a big deal that everyone has to talk about it all the time? All these things are not directly my husband's fault. He's always reassured me and told me not to pay attention to their words. He even makes a joke out of it and tries to cheer me up. So, I know you're wondering why I hold a grudge. My husband doesn't do all these things while they are present. He only reassures me behind closed doors. He laughs at their jokes and teases me in front of them. I'm a human being. Of course, I'd start reading into things. I just couldn't get why he never stopped them from telling those jokes and hurting me. I know he works for these people and has to put up an appearance, but give me a break. Your wife should not be the source of entertainment while you are standing right there. If it happened only once or twice, then it's fine. But it's not okay if it happens every single time for 6 straight years. I know I'll be accused of having low self-esteem, but is that really it? Maybe I just want my husband to reassure me once in a while, or maybe I'm jealous of him. I don't know. I still can't figure out what the feeling was. I still can't figure out why I specifically cheated on him with a man I'm younger than. I regret my actions and even find them disgusting for many reasons. Cheating on him has made me realize how much I need to work on myself and my mindset. But I still hold a grudge. I still feel like I have valid reasons, not for cheating, but for feeling dejected in our marriage. Now let me tell you all why I cheated on H. I feel like I was trying too much in our marriage, and he was not trying at all. Yes, that's the feeling I got in the marriage. Even though he acts like he doesn't care, I'm sure if people constantly told you how lucky your wife was to have you, you'd start believing it yourself. It felt like I was trying to match his standards while he just didn't try at all because he already knows he's everything I should want. I couldn't even make a request in our marriage because I felt like I should be happy already. We would go to parties and some people would come and tell me how amazing my husband is. Some would even tell me that they were jealous of me. I liked the idea of having someone everyone wanted. If you still remember, I said I have battled with always seeking validation from people. If a person like me gets told that I have something they want, I'll see that thing as something very precious. That's what happened in my marriage. I held my husband in such a high regard that I felt like he was too good to be true. What bothers me is the fact that my husband rolled with all the attention and preferential treatment. I'm not proud of being a cheat, but I definitely feel like my husband is selfish and self-centered. I have come to realize this recently. My husband could tell me what to wear to an event, but I couldn't do the same because I felt like he already had perfect choices. Yes, Redditors, I know, my marriage is complicated. There's been a lot of power fighting all through our 6 years of marriage. One person is always trying to hold the upper hand for some unknown reason. You know, I really do think we should have gone to a couples therapy. We needed to iron out these issues first before we could really be happy. Now, that's the problem, guys. The fights? There were no fights or arguments. There's this saying that says when things are bottled up, the explosion might lead to destruction. My husband and I never had arguments about these constant comparisons. I am a coward for not stating how I feel, but my husband is a cruel person for not caring to genuinely ask me how I felt. These are issues that ended up putting several ideas in my head. I tried to withstand the voices and ideas, but I fell for all of it. Now I'm facing the consequences of bottling things up and listening to the voices in my head. You all might be wondering how I started cheating and what led to it. Well, get ready because the story is about to begin. It all started at one of the dinner parties my husband was invited and he brought me as his date. No one ever invites me to those dinners. So it all started at one of those dinners. As usual, my husband was talking to his colleagues who swooned over him as I felt stuffy that day, so I excused myself from the table and wanted to go get some air outside. That's when I met S. I'll be keeping his name private for personal reasons, so please bear with me. In case some of you might have forgotten, let me remind you of the names and letter representations I've picked. I will be addressed as W. My husband will be addressed as H, and my AP will be addressed as S. I'm sorry for deviating. I wanted to make things clear since I'm not using our real names. So, moving on, I met S while I was outside to get some air. I was standing at the balcony while he strolled towards me. I did not notice him at first, but he cleared his throat and greeted me. I was surprised to see him trying to make conversation with me because I recognized him as one of the faces I'd seen at many events. He is a software engineer and has been a regular at almost all the events he attended with H. He introduced himself and I did the same. He asked me why I was standing alone on the balcony and I just told him I wanted to get some air. He said he needed air too, and so we just stood there looking at nothing in particular. I excused myself after some time because I was getting uncomfortable and I thought my husband was looking for me. When I got back to the dinner table, my husband was still engrossed in conversation with his colleagues. He did not even notice that I'd left the table. I got upset and went back to the balcony again. Thankfully, S was not there. I needed some time alone to calm my nerves. Let me remind you, my fellow Redditors, that I was already getting tired of my husband's nonchalant behavior at that point. So, some minutes later, S came to the balcony again. He complimented my dress and told me I looked beautiful. For someone like me who has only ever been compared to her husband, I liked the fact that S was giving me attention I craved. When I say attention, I mean I liked the fact that I was not being complimented only after my husband got his compliments. It felt good to speak to someone alone and have them engage in a conversation with me. S told me how he'd been watching me from afar and how he liked my composure and smile. I was shocked to hear all those things from someone that was practically a stranger. Fellow Redditors, I know some of you can relate to that feeling. I liked the idea of being known by someone else without even trying to get their attention. S seemed like a genuinely nice person, and I liked how attentive he was. While we spoke on that balcony, he listened to me intently. He would even quote the things I said minutes after I said them. I was finally getting the attention I've always wanted. When I said I seeked public validation, it does not have to be a group of people. As long as one person genuinely feels like I'm a special person, I'm happy. That's exactly how S was with me. I went home that day feeling very giddy and excited. I couldn't even sleep well that night because I kept replaying our conversation in my head. I actually looked forward to meeting him again, but I was not really sure I was ever going to see him again. But, as fate would have it, I saw him at the next event we attended 2 weeks later. Yes, my fellow Redditors, I saw him again. My reasons for looking forward to our meeting were not mischievous at all. I just really looked forward to being listened to, and that's what it was from the beginning. But as time went on, and as we met at several events, I realized that I was slowly getting attracted to him. I liked the way he told me several stories about himself and also asked about my stories too. It was a very big deal for me. Our usual spot to catch up and talk to each other were the balconies, empty halls, and hidden spots. All we did for the first few months was speak to each other. What made it worse was the fact that he always seemed to be at every event my husband attended. I later found out that he worked in the same company my husband worked in. That was the reason for our continuous encounters. One day he told me he was going on a business trip and would miss the next event, so he asked for my phone number. I did not want to give it to him at first, but the thought of not speaking to someone that's listened to me for weeks at the next event made me give in. I gave him my phone number, and that's how we started contacting each other. At first, it just started with text messages once in a while. There was nothing extra going on. Our text messages were even formal and platonic. I know that sounds unbelievable, but it is the truth. My relationship with S started out as a normal friendship. I can't even say we were really friends. Everything started out slow and full of boundaries. He knew I was married and I knew he was single. We did not try to step over the boundaries at first. But it was only a matter of time. I knew he was a bad idea because I never liked the way I was always looking forward to seeing him. A part of me knew where everything was headed, but I knew there was nothing I could do about it. I was getting the kind of attention and validation I'd always craved, and it made me make the wrong decisions. I know I could have spoken to my husband and told him all the things I found wrong in our marriage, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Accepting that you have a low self-esteem and an inferiority complex in a marriage is very difficult. It's not the easiest thing to do in a marriage because it makes you vulnerable. 1 month after giving him my phone number, he started calling me frequently. Our calls were short at first, but after some time, we began to talk for hours. I don't know if my husband noticed because I usually did the calling in the living room. If he noticed back then, he did not show it. He practically acted like he did not notice any change. Now that I think about it, I'm really surprised. I can't believe that my husband bottled up his suspicions till he hatched a plan against me. S and I soon became really close, and I began to look forward to attending my husband's events with him. Maybe this was one of the signs my husband saw. In the past, he'd have to ask me many times before I decided to follow him, but after I met S, I volunteered to accompany him to the events. I no longer cared about the constant comparisons and the unnecessary attention people gave to our age gap. There were even times when I'd ignore their jokes and act like I did not hear them. I noticed that the less interest I showed in the conversations, the more agitated my husband became. Now that I'm able to look back and reflect, I can boldly say that my husband really liked the attention he got from those conversations. That's the only sane explanation I can come up with. Even though S and I became really close, nothing intimate had really happened between us, not even a kiss or hug. But one day, everything changed. On this particular day, we were at my husband's boss's birthday party. I was sitting next to my husband and we were having a random conversation. S was nowhere to be found, and I just assumed that he did not attend the birthday party. I got pressed and decided to go use the restroom. My fellow Redditors, you needed to see the way I got spooked when I found S waiting for me in the hallway. I did not even think he attended the birthday party prior to that time, so I did not expect to see him there. I asked him what he was doing there, and he just told me to keep quiet. Yes, he told me to keep quiet because I'm certain he knew how risky what he was doing was. He didn't want to grab attention and make anybody else know we were together. We were at a birthday party that was practically filled with people. Anyone could have walked into that hallway and found us in a very compromising position. I said compromising position because S was holding my waist while he spoke to me. I'd been so nervous that my palms were sweaty. I knew that it was wrong to be in such a position with him, but it was almost like my brain stopped working. I couldn't think properly and I could barely say a word. I'm not trying to justify letting another man who wasn't my husband hold me. There's no explanation for that. I was wrong. But in that moment, all the wrong things seemed right. That was where we shared our first kiss. The kids had been so sudden and unexpected that I just stood there looking at him. He did not say a word after that. He just walked away and left me standing there. I stood there for a very long time because I was trying to gather myself together. A huge part of me felt like I should have stopped him, but there was still that irrational part of me that said I did nothing wrong. When I went back to the party to meet my husband, I could not look into his eyes for a very long time. I felt ashamed and stupid for kissing another guy right at the party he took me to. It was wrong, and I knew that I'd cheated on him in a way. But my husband did not seem to notice anything, even though I'd been afraid that he'd notice my awkward behavior. We chatted and had drinks like we usually did. I'm going to say this once. I did like the kiss. I did not like the circumstances around the kids, but I liked how I felt when I kissed S. Lol. You could say that I finally had the butterflies I'd been craving for a very long time. I felt excited and giddy. These are things I'd always wanted to feel for a long time. But for me, it was not just about the excitement I felt. It was mostly about how S treated me. I'm not afraid to say that I fell for how charming S was. It was almost like he studied me and read me like a book, like he knew all the things I craved and lacked, and then he swore to give them to me. He was everything I wanted my husband to be. He was the validation I thought I needed. There were even times when I'd wished I met him sooner. If I did, he would have been the one I married. But that's just me wishing things that are far from being fulfilled. That was me letting my little imagination run wild. I got a text message from S one day, and in the text message, he asked me to come see him at his house. Imagine how shocked I was to get that kind of message from a man I'd kissed a few days before that message. I did not expect him to be so forward and intentional about what he wanted to do. Even a little child would know why he really invited me to his place. At that point, all sense of reasoning was gone. I did not think twice before getting ready and going to see him that day. We slept together, and that was the beginning of our forbidden affair. Back then, I used to ask myself if there was a possibility of my husband finding out the truth. I thought about that because I was sleeping with one of his colleagues. I had doubts, but I always talked myself out of everything. S and I would meet up at several places and we'd make out for hours. He was like my little secret, and that made me really excited. We talked about the secrecy of our affair and decided not to meet up at the events anymore in case we got caught. Anytime there was an event, I would tell my husband to go alone and that I was not interested. After he was gone, I'd go meet S at his place, and then I'd stay there till my husband was almost home. Our arrangement had been going on for months, and we were never caught. My husband didn't even show signs that he suspected anything was going on between me and S. He was so good at pretending that I thought I was the one fooling him, unknown to me that he was one step ahead of me. I stopped caring for my husband's events and dinners. I didn't really even bother asking him how they went. These are things I don't really regret doing because I was honestly tired of talking about him all the time. Every discussion and chat we had was always centered around his friends, work, colleagues, and life. His. I was tired of making my life about his. With S, I could fully tell him about myself. We talked about each other, and we had actual conversations that were not centered around one person. I really do wish that the circumstances were different. That way, things would not have been as complicated as they currently are. I thought I was having the time of my life by being free and dating someone that I felt was better than my husband. It was a relationship that was very wrong, but it did not end. It went on for months. Boy, one day, everything was exposed. It happened on a Thursday. I can still remember everything vividly because that day shocked me beyond my imagination. Before that day, my husband went on a work trip for 2 days. I spent those 2 days with S, and it was honestly the best 2 days I had in a long time. When my husband got back the next day, I was already home. H did not show any signs of suspicion at all. He related with me like he usually did, and he even went as far as inviting me for the next event that was coming up months later. I was very relieved that he did not suspect anything because spending 2 days at S's place was very risky. I even thought that the gate man or even the gardener would have told him I was not home for 2 days. Well, it did not appear like they told him anything back then. When I tell you all that, I was relieved. Believe me, I was. When you're cheating on your partner, even you know what you are doing is wrong. You will always be guarded because you don't want to get exposed. You know that what you are doing is shameful and morally wrong, but you don't stop. In my case, it was because I liked how well S treated me in contrast with my husband. I was ready to risk getting caught just as long as I was able to spend some time with S. I never even thought I could get caught. I know my fellow Redditors would ask me, "Did you never plan on telling your husband the truth?" To be honest, I don't know. I don't know what would have happened if he didn't catch me cheating. I can't lie and say I was actually planning to tell him the truth because that will be deceitful. Telling him the truth was never in my kind because I am a coward. I could not imagine how he would react and how I would look. I never even allowed myself to think about that possibility at all. Maybe that had to be the biggest mistake I'd made. Letting myself believe that there was going to be no casualties after doing something so wrong was very bad. I was relaxed and felt like I was being smart only for me to get the shock of my life at the end of the day. I thought I was one step ahead of my husband, but all it took for me to find out I'd been fooling myself was one love from my husband. My fellow Redditors, it's time to tell you just how smart my husband is. His plan was so perfect that none of us even saw him coming. On that particular Thursday afternoon, I decided to go see S. I told my husband that I wanted to go visit a friend. He offered to drive me there, but I rejected his offer. Who wants to be driven by their husband to go see the AP? When I got to S's apartment, I called him first like I usually did. He answered the call and told me to wait for him at the door. While I was waiting, I was busy scrolling through my phone absent-mindedly, and that's when someone touched my back. I was so surprised that I almost dropped my phone. When I turned around, I practically gasped like a fish looking for water. My husband was standing in front of me with a higher frown on his face. I was surprised to see him there. I remember leaving him at home before I came there. My fellow Redditors, you needed to see how I just stood there without saying a word. My brain practically stopped as I tried to process what was going on. I did not understand why my husband followed me out of the house when I specifically told him I'd been going to visit a friend. When I finally found my voice, I asked him why he followed me there. My husband looked like he could kill me after I asked that question. His veins were practically protruding from his neck. He was very angry, and just looking at him, I knew that I was done for. He did not have to say anything for me to know that he found out the truth about my secret affair. His expressions were so stoic and hard that I knew what his anger was about. I still remember how my survival instinct kicked in, and then I asked my husband what he was doing there again. I secretly hoped that S was seeing us through the window and would end up not coming out. Unfortunately for me, it seemed like the universe was working against me that day. Almost instantly, S asked out of his apartment, "My fellow Redditors, do you know the worst part?" He had a rose in his hands. There was no need for evidence at that point because the truth was practically walking towards my husband. It took some time before S looked up and found my husband standing there. Everything happened fast. When I say fast, I mean that I could hardly understand how fast they moved. S tried to run away like a coward, but my husband grabbed him by the collar and punched him in the face. I screamed because I was overwhelmed with how fast everything had happened. One moment I was standing at my AP's apartment, and the other moment I was watching my husband wrestle with him. All I could do was scream because I was very shocked. Both of them were assaulting each other and there was blood. S had a bleeding nose and H wounded his hands. I tried to hold my husband and stop him from fighting anymore, but he pushed me to the ground violently and spat on me. Yes, Redditors, he spat on me. I felt like filth just lying on the floor with a sprained ankle. My husband wasted no time as he grabbed pictures from his pockets and threw them at me. Yes, he had pictures of me with S. There were pictures of us kissing, and there was even a picture of me entering his apartment. The pictures were recent, but there were also some that were over 2 months old. That was when the realization of everything finally dawned on me. I realized that my husband had been aware that I was cheating on him for a very long time. That was when I realized that he had been planning to expose me in his own little way and did not care to let me know he found out I was cheating. Everything was messed up, but what really left me speechless were pictures of me and S during the 2 days I thought my husband was on a work trip. The pictures were so intimate and invasive that I could not even look at them well. There were even pictures where I was almost naked. I ran to S and asked him if he knew about the pictures, but he denied my claims. He told me he knew nothing about the pictures and was just as surprised as I was. My husband grabbed my hand and shoved me till I was on the ground again. I can't even let myself recollect the awful words he said to me. His words were so demeaning and condescending that I broke into tears immediately. I knew cheating was going to lead me to a dark part, but I never expected the level of embarrassment I felt that day. My husband left me on the floor while I cried like a fool. S tried to comfort me and take me into his apartment, but I was over it. I needed space to think about everything that happened. When I got back to the house, my husband was already packing out his things. I was surprised because I thought I'd be the one packing. He told me he was going to send me the divorce papers in 2 weeks and that I should sign them immediately and send them back. He also told me not to ask for alimony and that he was only going to give me the house. I was meant to comply, or else he was going to release all the photos of me cheating on him. Everything he did was planned because he knew just how much I hated being criticized. He knew how much I sought validation and cared about what people thought of me. I agreed to his terms and watched him leave the house. I realized that my husband had been planning how to get out of the marriage without parting with his property for weeks. I'm not a gold digger, and I'm not necessarily interested in his money, but it hurts. My husband was not financially independent when we met each other. I practically had a hand in his success. I attended several meetings and consultations for him. I gave him referrals and assistance. Everything he had today is also as a result of the support I'd given him. I deserve alimony and he knows it. That's why he offered me the house. But I mess it up. It's all my fault. I cheated and I regret it. I don't just regret cheating because I lost the alimony. I regret cheating because I know it was wrong. He was not a good husband, and I was not a good wife. Our marriage was full of condescending words and insecurities, but I should not have taken cheating as the solution. I should have tried to make it work or gotten a divorce. Now I'm a cheater, and my husband has demeaning photos of me cheating on him. He's loved by many people. If those pictures get out, no one would care to have mercy on me. I'm in this awful position because of the poor choices I made. I regret my actions so much, and I hate myself every day for it. I don't know if I'm going to get back with S, and I don't know what next step to take. I'm still trying to think of how to get my life back together. I'm still trying to get back my self-confidence and self-esteem. If I don't work on those things, I can't be in a relationship with anyone. The divorce papers are going to be sent tomorrow, and I'm going to sign them like I promised. I hope 1 or 2 readers learn from my story. I ruined my own life. My husband did not treat me well. He was condescending and proud, but I should have walked out of the marriage instead of cheating. Everything is a lesson, and I've learned mine the hard way.